Ladybrillers, our guests and friends, welcome everyone to a community of powerful women leaders and entrepreneurs. This is the 42nd episode of the Ladybrille Woman Show. My name is Uduak, Miss Uduak for short. I'm the founder of Ladybrille and a business, fashion, and entertainment lawyer with the law firm of AB2 Law Group PC, located in California, USA. The Ladybrille Woman Show is an inspiring show that celebrates the brilliant women in business and leadership across all industry sectors and across the globe. For this episode, we are celebrating our Woman of the Month, the Ladybrille Woman of the Month for August 2016. And we have the one and only amazing Lisa Nichols. Before we move any further, though, let me tell you how you can subscribe to the show. You can subscribe via ladybrillemag.com, LADYBRILLE mag.com. If you have an iPhone or iPad, you can find us on iTunes. Please rate us and also leave comments on iTunes so we know how we're doing. If you have an Android, you can find us on Stitcher Radio. You can also follow Ladybrille on Twitter with its Twitter handle @Ladybrille. And if you'd like to follow me, the host, on my personal Twitter handle, that ID is @UDUAKLaw, @UduakLaw. To partner with us, advertise, or appear on the show as a guest, please email editor@ladybrille.com. So we're ready to begin. And by the way, for subscribers and listeners, if you've not heard subsequent episodes, we did something different to celebrate our anniversary issue, which was a special magazine feature that we had with 25 of our powerful women alums that you absolutely have to get. So go on the ladybrillemag.com website, or you can go to Gumroad, GUMROAD.com/Ladybrille to purchase your copy of this amazing special anniversary issue. So we're ready to begin, and before I go any further, for people who are new to the show, let me tell you what the Ladybrille Woman of the Month is all about, and then introduce our guest before we get into my interview with our wonderful, wonderful, amazing guest. I'm so excited to have her. The Ladybrille Woman of the Month is a feature on Ladybrille that celebrates women who empower themselves and others through their contributions and actions in their local and international communities. Those women are intelligent, courageous, confident, and innovative. They strive for balance in their personal lives, whether it be emotionally, mentally, spiritually, psychologically. They're persistent, and when they fall, they get right back up. Thus, women honor and stand in their truths. They're business and community leaders, visionaries, trailblazers, and game changers. There are sisters, aunties, mothers, friends, and so much more. We like to call them the Ladybrille Brilliant Women. So I'm delighted to have Lisa Nichols as our Ladybrille Woman of the Month for August 2016. And just very briefly about Lisa. Lisa Nichols is one of the world's most requested motivational speakers, as well as media personality and corporate CEO, whose global platform has reached and served nearly 30 million people. From a struggling single mom on public assistance to a millionaire entrepreneur, Lisa's courage and determination has inspired fans worldwide and helped countless audiences break through to discover their own untapped talents and infinite potential. So everyone, welcome the one and only Lisa Nichols, looking all fab and amazing. New location. I love the background over there. How delightful.
Thank you.
Amazing. That looks amazing.
Thank you. We're very excited about our new offices.
Awesome. So let's rock it out first with the whole fashion thing discussion,
Yes.
and then we want to get right into the discussion on the Ladybrille Woman of the Month, celebrating you and how amazing you are. So let's start first with your hair. Your hair is so beautiful. I really like
Thank you.
what I'm seeing. What's going on there?
My hair is my crown. You know, I went natural probably about 15 years ago. And while natural to many people, they think it's a very easy style to wear, it was the longest journey for me to get to. I always say, because it was the journey back to Lisa. And while I love all styles of hair, for me, it was just a statement that says, I've arrived at me. And now I want to introduce me to you. And so I love it. I cut it back and made it shorter as I released almost 90 pounds. And I want it all to be proportioned and just stepping into this new season called Lisa. You know, I just turned 50. And
Wow.
yeah,
Happy
I just
birthday.
turned 50.
You look
Thank
nothing
you.
like it. And your images, by the way, off the hook. I mean,
Thank
you're
you.
killing it. I was like, who's the model here? I thought I was. And I'm like, She just got the poses
No,
right.
you're the model, and
Amazing.
you're the model. I'm the ham. Well,
Oh,
I'm,
you're handling it. You look amazing.
thank
Every
you.
every picture I saw, just really fab. Great angles, great photographers, great lighting. Everything was just on point.
Well,
So
coming
good
from
job.
you, that means a lot to me. That means a lot.
So I find it interesting what you discussed about the hair, and hair can be so political and so much
Yes.
drama in hair. But let me take it a different direction. As a former personal trainer, I've done my time, folks, with all kinds of different jobs to get to where I'm at now. But I personal trained for over 5 years, put me through college and law school, actually. And I understand the immense intensity that it takes to lose weight. It's a mental thing. And I was intrigued particularly by your story because here's a woman who's helping inspire the world. People to shed weight, people to, inspire their lives, empower them from their bank accounts to their families and marriages and all that. And yet there's this big thing that she was carrying visibly and we all didn't see it until she now lost 90 pounds. So let's get into that. What was it like for you to have to deal with that interpersonally while still telling the world, hey, be
Live your
strong, be
dreams, right?
inspired, follow your
Right.
dreams, you can
Right.
do it.
Right. It was, I look back at pictures of myself. I was over 210 pounds
Wow.
for 19 years
How
and
tall are you?
5'3".
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, this still is a very personal conversation for me. I haven't had it a lot to this depth, the depth that I'm about to give it to you.
Wow. Well, let's make it happen.
Yeah, and I needed time to settle in it. I needed time to pray about it. I needed time to find my peace with it inside this body, not inside the struggle that I was in for the physical struggle, but outside of it to then look back at it and go, okay, how do you feel about it? Where are you with it? Because I also, as public as my life is, I honor my privacy as well. And for a long time, I was in a private, and the only way I could say it, so excuse the way I'm saying it, but I was in a private health hell.
Wow.
And
That's profound.
and, yeah, I was in a very private health hell, and it felt so out of control that I didn't even know how to talk about it because it wasn't all weight. I had hormone imbalance, and I would have my cycle for 28 days out of a month.
Wow.
I had 6 blood transfusions in 3 years.
Wow.
And no one ever knew while I was making bestsellers. So while I was doing chicken soup for the African American, so chicken soup for the African American woman, so I would literally get off stage, drive myself to urgent care, and have a blood transfusion. And then I was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea.
I
So
was
while
about to ask you
yeah,
how much of that
yeah.
is a lifestyle thing, too.
Yeah.
Wow.
So while most people with severe sleep apnea wake up between 28 and 33 times an hour, I was diagnosed to wake up 62 times an hour.
Wow. Jesus.
And so I was in this struggle called no energy, no sleep, sleep deprived, blood transfusions, all while I'm motivating the world,
Yeah.
And so I wasn't living a lie because everything I felt, everything I was saying, I felt. I just had this personal health hell that I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even discuss it with anyone. And so my doctor said to me 3 years ago, she gave me a report and she said, Lisa, you're 211 pounds.
Wow.
And your metabolism is virtually non-existent because your heart rate is so slow because you're so sleep deprived and you have to do something urgently. So I had to seek medical help. I had to humble myself. I had to cry the release of my ego. I had to surrender that I could be brilliant in this area and absolutely need help and be in breakdown in this area. And then I went and sought doctors, and I looked at all my options. I looked at medical support. I looked at family support. I finally raised my hand and said, I need help. And so I had to evict my ego or my she-go out the room. And in December of 2014, I went and got help and had doctors around me and supporting me. And it's been a very private journey and a very liberating journey, a very cathartic journey, a very healing And so many women have reached out to me. So many. I wasn't trying to be a leader in this area. That's what I really want to tell you.
I know, right?
I wasn't trying to, I wasn't trying to lead the parade in this area. I simply wanted to rescue myself. I wanted to rescue my future. I wanted to be alive. My doctor said it's not a matter of if you will have a heart attack, Miss Nichols. It's a matter of when will you have a heart attack. And that's a non-negotiable for me. I would never commit conscious suicide, so I'm not going to commit unconscious suicide. So I appreciate the journey of health. I'm in a whole new place now. I yoga all the time. I meditate all the time. I train all the time.
Oh, that's great.
I had my I had my protein shake this morning.
That's awesome.
So I feel like I'm a new woman. I haven't met this woman. The last time I was this size, I was 24 years old.
Wow, that's amazing. So, well, let's parse it out just a little bit, because there's just a lot in there to have people really understand it. And I didn't want it to be, particularly with this, because we are celebrating the brilliant woman, the woman of the month. So it's all about her, not necessarily what she's doing for other people. Because our community is filled with women leaders and entrepreneurs. It's brilliant women, and for the most part, they're doing for others, giving. So this is really about them and honoring them and celebrating them. So in that sense, I want to still parse it out a bit. The exhaustion part, lifestyle, as I was beginning to say, is a key part of it. A lot of our women, yourself included, traveling all over the world, jumping from plane to plane, jet lag. It's the reality of traveling. It's not as fun as most people might think. The speaking might be great, but the processing is a hard one. So what have you changed about your scheduling now to accommodate that kind of rigorous reality of what you do?
First, to every superhero woman, including myself, I began to listen to what my grandmother told me. My grandmother had told me years ago. You know how you can hear something and you don't really apply it. You just put it in your back pocket.
Yeah.
My grandmother told me in my early 20s. She said, "Sweetheart, as you mature, you will understand that no is a complete sentence." She said, "It doesn't require explanation. It doesn't require justification. As a matter of fact, sweetheart, if you want to make your yes more valuable, then you'll begin to exercise your no more often." I didn't get it. Because I want everyone to love me. I want everyone to like me. I wanted to be everyone's solution. I had something to prove. And so one of the things, and I'll tell you about my schedule adjustment, but I need to tell you how I arrived to adjusting my schedule. Number one, I had to consciously remind myself, because sometimes I forget. I had to consciously remind myself in all of my brilliance and all of my awareness and all of my obedience and all of my servant leadership and all of that, I have nothing to prove to anyone. That I woke up enough. That before I checked anything on my Facebook, I already liked myself. So I don't need anyone else to like my post, because I like myself. Now I'm grateful that people like me. I'm grateful that they choose me. But when I begin to show up from a place of completeness and enoughness, all of a sudden I could exercise the word, "No, this isn't a good time." Or I would love to do that, but my plate is already full. This weekend, I got 4 texts from my family members, and because they know that I'm in town for the summer, and they're all inviting me to something different. I was very grateful. I had a pool party that I was invited to. I had a fair, and I had one general text that I would cut and paste back to everyone.
And now they're gonna see this and know what you were doing.
And it's totally fine. Okay. I had one text, and the text said, "Thank you for your invite, but today I am very busy doing absolutely nothing." And so I say that to say, one, I began to operate from a place of enough. I am enough. I have nothing to prove. 2, I began to exercise the word no, not now. Now is not a good time for me, and I'd love to do it, but at another time. And then 3, I do blackout dates. I do blackout dates on my calendar where I don't have to have anything there. Because what happens is like many other women, I look for the free date and I see nothing there. So I put something there. Well, now what I do is I put a blackout date, and the blackout date is don't put anything there so that I'm free to do whatever arises. Now, normally on those days, I do something, but I may go see jazz on the beach. I may go to the farmer's market. And so I began to protect my days or just protect my evening, like tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is a blackout evening. Tonight I'm hosting guests at my house. Last night I worked late. Tomorrow night is a blackout evening, which means I want to be free to watch Netflix all night if I choose. I want to be free to take a long bath. So that's what I do.
Okay. So there's something you said there about enoughness. I find intriguing. Why would you even be at a place where you're thinking that you got to show up and not feel enough to have the likes validate you as Lisa Nichols, whether you're talking Lisa Nichols of the past or the present? Right. Why is that even a conversation in your head?
It comes from a place for me of really operating in the past out of codependence. Meaning I'm rescue 911. I mean, I want to rescue. I want to rescue. And so it comes more from that place. Like, I want to, help you have a great life versus if you're having a challenging day, hold the space with you, hold prayer with you, and release you and your day to be whatever it is. Feeling like if it comes in my atmosphere, that must mean I have to help it.
You have to fix it. Yeah,
I have to fix it.
I know that feeling.
I have to fix it. I have to rescue. And so that's been a long, long journey for me. And I can't tell you that I've arrived there. I can tell you I'm more aware of it. I can tell you that I can self-correct, self-check, Lisa, these days. I can out myself sooner, quicker, faster. But being able to, people like you and I and the women who read this magazine, who operate in this space, we have a reserve and a resiliency and a tenacity.
Absolutely.
And we know we can go somewhere in ourselves to get it done.
Absolutely.
And what I realize is because I still have something in my cup does not mean I need to give it up.
Yeah. Or completely pour it out.
Like this is what I would constantly do. And then I do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm in the season where I want to leave inside my day and have something left in my cup for me. And if I don't use it, that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by enough. That it requires me reminding myself I've done enough. I've loved enough. I've shared enough. I've served enough. I've rescued enough. It's enough.
Wow. I can resonate, and I know a lot of our women can resonate, and women who will see this can absolutely resonate and hear this as well, because it is quite a challenge to be able to do that. What about the guilt element? How did you have any of that, and how were you able to get rid of that?
Did I? I love this conversation. I actually prefer conversations like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to talk about how I made my first million. I mean, I just worked really hard. I picked up the phone and I dialed for dollars. It doesn't take much to talk about how I created a bestseller. While those are great topics, these are the topics that matter. Yeah. This is the topic that she wants to hear. Yeah. What did I do in the dark of the night when no one was looking? How did I get back up when I was knocked down for the 5th time? Guilt
and having this time the world staring at you.
Oh,
yes. It's so different.
Ooh, it is very, very different. Very different to heal a hurting heart while you're inspiring others and while you're being watched by thousands. Very different.
Absolutely.
Very different to forgive the perceivingly unforgivable while you're showing other people how to love themselves and forgive as well. It is different. Thank you for acknowledging that. The guilt. I remember years ago when it was October and I was, my company had generated about $975,000 up until October. And I decided to take the rest of the year off. I said I was tired. And the next year we were blessed enough to get to about $985,000 by August. And I said, I want to take the rest of the year off as well. And I had to really address that because there's no way I want to take 6 months off. That's just not congruent with me. And I realized it was the guilt of feeling like I was going to make $1 million and how it might make me different from my family and how it might make me more ostracized from my family. And my family and I are very close. But when I say ostracized, I mean my travel made me feel I was away. I can't change that. So I would miss things. I'd miss no major holidays, but I missed enough family gatherings. My family gets together once a month, every month.
Oh, wow.
And I would miss
Great.
those. Yeah, yeah, it is. And so I had to deep dive into why am I wanting to slow down? Every time I approach the $1 million mark, I want to slow down. And it was one, I didn't know if someone who made $1 million would still be godly or loving or compassionate or a servant leader or an advocate or a community advocate. I didn't know. I didn't know if that would make me less African. I didn't know if it'd make me less Black. I didn't know if it'd make me less connected and relatable. I just didn't know. It was foreign territory to me. And I knew how to hustle. I knew how to get my grind on. I didn't know how to run a multi-million-dollar business. I didn't know how to have that kind of. So one, there was a relationship to money.
I'm gonna have to take notes on this. Some great things.
No, yeah. This was big for me. And it was so big that I actually spend time teaching my students about it. Because if you do everything that we're talking about doing, if you implement the things we're doing together, you're going to have another problem. And that other problem is making sure you're ready for your next level of financial wealth. And for me, my guilt came around my financial wealth. So when you talk about guilt, my guilt didn't come around serving my family. And it didn't come around anything other than my family, because I watched people in my family struggling and I was living in such abundance that I began to give away all my money. I began to give it away. When I tell you, give away thousands and thousands and thousands of money that I couldn't write off, because it wasn't like that. It was, oh, here's 5,000. Oh, because it made me feel. Now I want you to understand this. It didn't make me feel better. It made me feel less guilty. Does that make sense? There's a very big distinction. I wasn't running toward prosperity. I was trying to outrun guilt. And so my behaviors were to outrun guilt. And so that's been a big thing for me. And I've done a lot of work around it. Yeah, it was very huge for me, very huge.
That is so interesting.
And then not having any woman that looks like me in my community that I could talk to.
Beyond Oprah, who would still seem out of your community because her story is different.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I didn't have any woman that I could go, what did you do? And I'm not a celebrity in the sense of actor, actress, singer. I'm a CEO. I'm a businesswoman. And so there's a different context to that. You know, there's a different sizzle to that. There's a requirement. Matter of fact, there's less sizzle in a businesswoman than there is in a celebrity actress.
It's so nitty gritty. Get down, roll your sleeves, figure this out.
Exactly. And so I didn't have anyone I could talk to. I couldn't call up Kathy Hughes. I couldn't call up, I couldn't call up some of the women that I have some access to now. And so
by the way, because a lot of those women are, if you really think about it, employees or independent contractors. They're being hired by the company, the production companies, to do the work.
Yes.
You have to pay people, and they need to be able to put bread on and food on their table.
Yes.
So it's all so connected. And so
it is. And so I had to do the emotional work to allow myself to have financial freedom and prosperity, and not feel responsible for bringing my entire family or community or culture along. Absolutely. Wow. Because go back to your previous question and my previous answer, my codependency will kick in. And I could theoretically have a very successful brand and be emotionally and financially and physically broke. And I wasn't aware, I'm not willing to live that story. And I want to be fiscally responsible, not just to my now, but to my future, to my son's children, and he doesn't even have them yet. So I want to shift the cultural experience. And so I had to address my guilt. So I talked
and not apologize for it.
Unapologetic.
Constantly having to apologize for maybe moving and changing zip codes is ridiculous.
Exactly. And so, I'm having a pool party at my house very soon. My family, I always invite them over. They know 4 times a year she's going to have an amazing party at the house. And And it still is a potluck.
Absolutely.
Don't stop making a potluck because it's at my house. Make it a potluck as well.
Bring it.
So I just made sure things didn't change. There's some common grounds that I need to make sure I keep so that I'm anchored. My life changed so drastically in 2007 when The Secret came out, when I was on Oprah, when I was on Larry King. Everything in my life changed. What I had to go back and do was find those pillars that really matter to me, that I need, and fight, and I say fight in a very healthy way, for those pillars to exist. And
absolutely.
so I create that. And sometimes it requires me to fund them now, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with. I just took 9 family members to Hawaii, but I spent 9 days in Hawaii with my 87-year-old grandmother, my 73-year-old father, my mom. And so those things became very important, so that my guilt, managing shame, managing the feeling of being alone, a lone ranger. So
I'm having to, I write, I take a lot of notes just because I love to write as well, but you're just giving me so much to talk about. It's crazy.
Amen.
I'll come back to managing guilt and shame and all that later on, but let's go back to something you said about spirituality and not losing that and culture. I found in my observations that some of the most powerful, influential leaders have a very strong spiritual core to them. So for you, let's talk about spirituality. How does that inform all that you do?
It's my soil. So it's not even on the leaf of Lisa. It's the soil of Lisa. It God, I get emotional just even saying it. It's so, I tell people, I didn't choose to be a speaker. I surrendered to God's calling on my life.
Amen to that.
I became obedient to my anointing. I became obedient to the assignment on Lisa's life. So it's my source. I don't quote scripture to people, but I live scripture in my daily life. I don't live in religiosity in any religion, but I live in my spirituality. I know, like I know, which is unwavering faith, by the way, that the steps that I'm taking are the right steps because they're ordered.
Absolutely.
And I know as long as I'm obedient, I won't be made a fool of. The moment my ego gets hooked and I want to make it about Lisa, not servant leadership, then I stand the chance of it all collapsing. So the Lisa you see today is the Lisa that in 2003, I laid on my face. I didn't pray on my knees. I laid on my face. I extended my hands in my little 1-bedroom apartment.
You went like David in the Psalms.
I went like David. Yes. Yes. I eliminated any space between me and God. And I surrendered. And I said, if you promise to never leave me nor forsake me, I promise I will follow you and be obedient, even with knees knocking and teeth chattering. And sister, you have to know that I have had more days where I've taken the leap with knees knocking and teeth chattering. And I've held fear in one hand and faith in the other. Amen. And jumped anyway and knew that God would either give me something soft to land on or God would give me wings to fly. And I am here because of my obedience and my humility. And if at all I am a good teacher, it is because I am a far better student. Far better. So faith has everything. Spirituality has everything. It is the reason why I can walk out on the skinny branch. Like I can walk on the skinny branch when I was over 210 pounds.
You were walking that way.
I was walking on the skinny branch.
Completely confident, superwoman.
Completely. I built my brand, more of it at over 210 pounds.
Exactly.
Because I didn't question the physical realm of God's assignment on my life. This was this is a body bag that holds my spirit.
Absolutely.
It doesn't define my essence. And the reason why I released the weight and I got radical was because in in November of 2013, I asked God to give me, I said, God, what next? Yeah. I've built this crazy business. I've been on international and national media and platforms. What next? I didn't even dream it to be like this. And God gave me this clear list of what I'm going to be doing for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And it was pretty intense and it was pretty scary and my knees were knocking. Then I asked one question that most people may not ever ask because you're afraid of the answer. I said, God, what could I do to get in my way? And I got one answer. It stilled me. I was like this. And God said, your health. Right now, your body, your temple cannot live out your life's purpose. When I tell you that shook me up, that right there was my wake up call. And I don't tell a lot of people that. It's still very private that I would hear that my body, my temple was not prepared to live out my life's calling. Yeah. And that if I want to be responsible for my life's calling, get my temple in order.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to hear you say this because I know for me personally, and I've realized not everybody necessarily has that, but even for God to show and speak to you and show you the vision, that means you are really in a different space with him and that relationship and connection and walking with him, not necessarily as rituals or religion but truly communicating. Relationship. Absolutely.
Relationship.
I find it also interesting, just the last point on the whole, concern about losing family and community as a result of being wealthy is, do you think a little bit of that has to do with what we preach in churches across the world? Because when you look at the Old Testament, when you followed God and had a relationship with God, you were extremely successful and wealthy. New Testament, Jesus comes and, of course, give up everything and follow him. But there's nothing to show that the other part is still not a part of following God, like if you have a relationship. So where do you think that mentality of saying, hey, if I'm successful, I might be isolated and
I'm not as godly.
Where did that come from?
I think it's taught. I think it's taught. I think that God is an abundant God.
Absolutely.
We serve an abundant God. We live in an abundant universe. My latest book is called Abundance Now. Yes. Like, it's not by accident, because I wanted to get that message. So, you just pushed the button. This is my thing right now.
Let's make it happen. Let's go.
I'm going to take the gloves off on this one.
Hey, I'm with you. I'm in there with you.
We teach scarcity, lack, and deprivation.
We do.
We teach suffering as if it's a crown of glory. And like we can put ash across our forehead and commit to suffer forever. I say that we've been taught to suffer. We live a suffering, scarcity, martyr mentality life only to get to God and to hear from God directly. You didn't have to do it that way. I'm an abundant God.
Yeah.
But since you're already here, come on in. We take on other people's limiting beliefs. And when I say that, it started years and years and years ago. And we keep repeating it like it's gospel. Yeah. Like it's gospel. How many things do we do that our parents taught us that didn't make any sense when they did it, but because my mother says, don't date a man who this is going to be crazy, but I just want to show you, this is an example of teaching and duplicating chaotic things that don't make sense. My mother would tell me when I was little, when I became a teenager, don't date a man who wears white shoes.
Whoa.
Why? So why, Mom? Just don't date a man who wears white shoes. So, okay, whatever. I didn't date a man who wears white shoes. It wasn't a big deal that white shoes weren't in. But then I asked her one day, why do I not date a guy to wear white shoes? She goes, I don't know. Your grandmother told me not to date a guy. So I go to my grandmother, who's still alive. She's almost 90. I said, Grandmother, why don't we date a guy who wears white shoes? She goes, don't date a guy who wears white shoes. Lisa, you can't. I said, why? She said, I don't know. My mother taught me. So at the time, my grandmother's 90 now, but at the time, my great grandmother was still alive, my grandmother Claudine. So I go to my great grandmother and I say, Grandma Claudine, why do I not date a guy who wears white shoes? She goes, I don't know. My mother told me. No one ever knows. And I believe we teach the same thing And so, by the way, I went on a really great date on Saturday,
Excuse me.
and he was wearing white shoes.
Oh, okay.
So it was an all white party. So everyone was wearing all
Oh,
white, but
that's
he was wearing
great.
white shoes.
That's
And
congratulations.
yes,
That's
right, because that's
awesome.
another part of my life that I want to
Yes.
make sure it lives.
Yes.
So I looked down at his shoes and I chuckled because he's a great man. And of
Hmm.
course, I wouldn't have paid attention to him had I
Follow
repeated the
that
site.
ritual. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
I
Oh,
think that
that saying. Yeah.
I think that we learn
Hmm.
suffering, and we learn martyr, and we learn sacrifice, but sacrifice to the detriment of our own comfort.
Absolutely.
That's not what God says
Hmm.
for us.
No,
And
not at
so
all.
I'm a stand
Hmm.
for I'm a stand for exploding that myth.
Hmm.
I'm a stand for I can be of greater service to you, sis,
Hmm.
when I am emotionally, spiritually, and fiscally responsible for my life. I
Absolutely.
can be of greater value to you. If I want to be a servant leader, I can lead better if I'm leading from a place of prosperity, not
Hmm.
scarcity.
Well, I always say too, and it's very frustrating. We say this, but then we go to the so-called non-godly folks to ask for money to fund spiritual things. Sort of contradictory to some extent. Or
Yes.
our community says don't have, but then we blame
Yes.
and get mad to people who have because they're not giving us what they've decided to work however way in a
I
clear
agree.
path.
And we
So we
label them.
must change that. Say that again.
And we label them.
And we label
We,
them.
we
Absolutely.
label them bad. We label
Hmm.
them stingy. We label them corrupt. We label them
Absolutely.
ungodly. We put all the labels on them. And what we do
Because it makes
is
us feel good.
we put labels on them so that we can feel better in our parking
Yeah.
space, park between broke and broken.
Yeah.
And so I always say, why don't we move your mental zip code? Why don't we pack your bags and move your mental zip code to a better place, a place that might be foreign?
Hmm.
Are you willing to move to a mental space that might be foreign?
Foreign.
What I know is that people will be more committed to a familiar discomfort
Hmm.
than they will be to an unfamiliar new possibility. And I'll say that again. Most people are more committed to a familiar discomfort than they will be committed to an unfamiliar, key word is familiar and unfamiliar, to an unfamiliar new possibility. They'll stay in a hectic relationship, a dysfunctional relationship, a community they don't like, a job they hate because it's familiar versus taking a risk on yourself. You're not even taking a risk on a relationship. You're not even taking a risk on a job. You're taking a risk on yourself. And here I'm committed to believe and share you are the best risk you can ever have. You're the best
Absolutely.
investment you can ever make. You're the best. Why not risk something for you? And so I am a disruptor. I like being a disruptor because if we disrupt, when you're planting new seeds in your garden, when you're planting new fruit, when you're planting new harvest, you have to disrupt and till the old. Look at our minds sometimes.
Yeah.
That old dirt that's just solid and packed. You got to till it. You got to turn it up. You got to uproot it. You got to make it absolutely disheveled before you can plant a new seed. And after you plant a new seed, then and only then can you reap a new harvest. So many people are trying to reap a new harvest from an old seed.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because recently I was talking about that betting on yourself.
Yeah.
Why do it for everybody else but yourself?
Yeah.
And you're a disruptor. I call myself a game changer because if I
Yes.
show up, we're going to change this game.
I'll change this
But I
game.
also understand the emotional side of sticking with the familiar because it
Yes.
is familiar and the
Safe.
idea it's fear. It's all fear. The idea of pushing beyond boundaries to that unfamiliar place
Yes.
is so overwhelming sometimes and so intimidating that it just makes more sense to stay with the familiar and the comfortable unless you're pushed out
So
of it by
exactly.
circumstances because eventually change does happen. it's
Yes.
it's whether you want to be a part it's whether you want to control that change to some extent or whether you want that change to control you. You get to
Yes.
decide.
You
But
do.
yes,
Are you
absolutely.
going to be in the driver's seat of the change? Are
Yeah.
you going to be in the passenger seat when change occurs? Are you going to be in the back seat when change occurs? Or will you even be in the trunk sometimes when change occurs? I say move up from the trunk to the back seat to the passenger seat, and slide over from the passenger seat to the driver's seat. And when you realize that it's okay if you've run into a speed bump or a stop sign or hit a wall before, you still got gas in your car called your life. You
Mm-hmm.
still got a gas pedal under your feet. You still have much life to live. When people get fearful, now fear is a very interesting thing
Ugh.
because fear is an emotion. Fear is an emotion, just like love, just like compassion, just like, joy. Fear is an emotion. It just is the emotion that paralyzes us and causes us not to move. It's very paralyzing. But let me tell you the root of fear. The root of fear is when you project an outcome into the future that hasn't even occurred yet. And then you bring that outcome back into your emotion and let it drive your feelings.
And replay it over
and you replay it. But it literally is a picture in your head of a future you made up. It hasn't happened yet. So fear of something happening, when someone says, I'm afraid of getting on stage, I'm afraid people are going to laugh at me. So you just paint a picture that people laughed at you. If you can paint that picture, then I'd like to challenge you, whenever you feel fear, to go, okay, I felt fear from painting that picture. What happens if I change the way I paint that picture? I'm not saying do a Pollyanna outcome. No. But what if you just tweaked it a little bit so that you're more in the driver's seat of the outcome? When I began to do that, fear informs me. Fear informs you. Fear says, go get more information. Fear says, get somebody to support you. Fear says, stop, pause, slow down. Fear is informing you. It's not designed to prevent you to have what you want. It's designed to inform you and influence your next step with more caution. It's not designed to stop. When I figured that out, because I spent more days afraid, because I'm playing big. You don't play big without a sense of fear. See, fear is not a bad thing. I feel fear all the time. I just leap with fear. I leap with fear. I have no problem leaping with fear. And so people always say, Lisa, do you get afraid? All the time. All the time. My company went public 2 years ago. We're about to start trading. We're about to really start hitting the public market in the street. You don't think my knees aren't knocking and my teeth aren't chattering? I'm the second African Black woman to have. Of course, I'm like, ugh. All of a sudden, my books are not my books. My numbers are not my numbers. My business is not my business. My investor.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So I spend more days with my knees knocking than not these days. I just simply go and give myself what I need so that I can keep moving in the face of fear. I don't wait for my fear to dissipate. I don't wait for it to go away. I probably never move. I've learned how to move and live with fear like it's my lotion. Okay, fine. You're here. Great. Let's go.
Live with fear like it's my lotion. I love that. That's a great quote. So it's a great transition because you actually are moving us where I wanted to go, which is a discussion how you built this multi-million-dollar company, right? Yeah. And now it's traded on the New York Stock Exchange?
No, not yet. We're getting our way there. We're just
now a public.
It's just now a public company. Okay. We literally are. Literally, my call after yours is my attorney with the term agreements for the investors as we raise capital. So very exciting time.
Wow.
Very exciting time.
That's just amazing. So let's talk a little bit about that, on how to, I think for me personally, and also women in my community or the Ladybrille community women, a lot of women that I've talked to is the how. There's a lot of kumbaya, a lot of conferences, even women conferences. You pay money, you show up, organizations. And
they never tell you the how.
I just had a recent conversation with some of the top leaders in this country about that as well, which is, no one's breaking it down on how.
Right. You're right.
Don't tell us we can be just as successful. Everyone's working just as hard, 40, 80 hours, juggling mommyhood and everything else.
Right.
So for you, how did you discover the how?
Yeah.
Once the light bulb went on that you could do this.
I'm so grateful for that question, because I designed my entire company around, if someone decides to step onto my campus, I have to assume they want to know all the how. Now, I've been charged with giving too much information because because I'm in the how. I believe you want the steps. I went to the same training 42 times. 42 times. It took me 14 years to go 42 times. And it was very, very intense. I spent over $651,000 going to this training. And I don't say that to brag. I say that to say I was either crazy or radical or intentional. And some people call me crazy. My family thought I had lost my mind. I was this first training, the very first one, I was the only woman and I was the only person of color. So it was no one like me. And they were all business, corporate, older white men. And it was just, there's just this natural distance between the gender and the culture. And yet I was willing to be radical enough for my future to go, I don't understand a thing they are saying. No habla español. But I will stay here until I understand everything they're saying, because I believe where they are is where I want to go. It took me longer than I thought. It cost me more than I thought. And 14 years later, 42 sessions later, $600,000+ later, wow. I got it.
And you could make a return on investment.
I can monetize
gazillion folds.
I can monetize it. People say, whenever I do share that, people go, you spent $651,000. I say, yeah, but I made about 15 million. I'm okay. It's a good investment, good ROI. But the reason why I went so many times is because the how-to was never broken down. So I kept piecing it together. I kept trying to piece it together. You talk about the conferences. That was exactly my experience. So I started going to the same one to try and piece the conversations together. So today, when I teach, and I have different ways where people can step on our campus, but when I teach, I'm very adamant on going, my goal is to connect the dots for you, because I couldn't connect the dots when I was learning. I couldn't connect the dots. And so how did I? Let me share with you how I did. Number one, and I'm going to give you the top line, and there's a couple of, but I'll give you the top line. So number one is I got someone 2 to 10 steps ahead of me. And I made them my consistent investment. So my training and development came through having a business coach, not a business coach.
Yeah, not a life coach, not anyone, just business.
Business coach.
Niche, yeah.
A very niche, and building the infrastructures. I need her to help me build the Lego blocks. Now, she did 80% business, 20% life, because I had to get my life straight. I learned very early on, your business will never outgrow your life. If your life is in chaos, your business will have to, it will cap out.
It's an extended value of who you are.
Exactly. So yeah. And so I got a life coach, and then I created a consistency with my business coach. My business coach. I created a consistency where I was always touching the learning modality at least once a month, or once a quarter, or once every other month. So I had to constantly keep going back to learning what to do next. I didn't want to know everything I needed to do because I get overwhelmed. I wanted to know my next. So I chunked my business down into bite-sized, palatable, digestible pieces. I broke it into 4 key areas. I broke it into sales. I broke it into marketing. I broke it into operations. And then for me, I broke it into finances. And then over all of that, I treated my technical skill separately. So I wore 2 hats. I was in my technical hat, which was the speaker. And the speaker, I learned how to develop content, develop trainings, touch my market, and appeal to my market. That's in my technical hat. That's me as the technician. Totally separate, me as the CEO. The best thing I did was I separated my job. They were both full-time jobs. And I treated them both to have the 4 legs under each one of them to hold the table. So under my technical skill, under my business skill, under my CEO, and I understood when I was doing each one. So speaking is natural. I can speak all day long. But early on into my business, I spent only 20% of my time speaking, or even focusing on speaking. I spent 80% of my time
on the
being a
administrative
CEO,
side,
being a CEO, which is why my company went public, because they're not investing in, they don't even know Lisa Nichols. I kid you not. On Wall Street.
Really? Because I was going to do a follow-up to say, well, you've built this whole product, if you will, because it's products at the end of the day, around a particular talent and voice. So when that talent and voice is not there for whatever reason, good or bad, how do you then keep the brand sustainable? But I think that answer is already there, because you have the likes of Jim Rohn and the rest that have gone on, rest in peace, but their brands continue to succeed them because the brand is really strong. So I guess that answers that. So that's interesting to hear that some people are not even aware of the personality behind the brand.
So far.
So what are they buying into then?
They're buying into the business model that my business has grown double digits every year for the last 10 years through an economic recession, and it continues to grow. This bottom line numbers. They're buying the numbers. They're buying, this is a $1 billion industry. It's the self-development industry.
It is.
And they don't have access to any other company in the industry that's publicly held. It's proven itself through the likes of Jim Rome and Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins and et cetera, Les Brown, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a proven market. So it's a low risk. And the brand, when they do their research, the brand is a proven brand. Though they don't know me, they look and go, okay. And the fact that our business has a business model that has a strong online presence.
Yes.
And so we make automated money. Now it's memorialized. So if God forbid, if something happened to me tomorrow, or if I retire tomorrow, we still have all my content is owned by the company.
Yeah.
And
you have that IP and you just keep making licensing and everything else.
Exactly. And the smallest part of my revenue annually is from keynote speaking.
Wow.
The smallest part. So we built this machine.
Such a brilliant business model.
Yeah, we built a machine behind the brand. So all I'm responsible for doing is waving my flag and saying, come play on my campus. And then when someone steps on the campus, depending if they're at the AA level of speaking and writing, or if they're at the BA level or the PhD level, we have something for everyone at every level. They get to choose which track they want to take to learn from us as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, or as personal development. So I'm very clear on what do we serve and how do we serve people. We serve speakers, authors, and coaches. We serve entrepreneurs, and we serve people in personal development. And here's how you step onto the campus. And every point where you step on the campus, you can be served without me being there live.
Well, we'll definitely have to maybe talk offline.
I love
that. The potentials for Ladybrille community that are interested in being a part of your speaking.
I would love that.
Interested. Absolutely. We could work something out for them.
Yeah. Any way that I can serve you, my answer is yes. And you determine the question.
Absolutely. And I like that you do break it down as well. So let's get ready to start wrapping it up, because we can go all day. You already know that.
I know.
And I'm going to ask you some of the staple questions we typically ask our Women of the Month. And the way I'll start it is first asking, how do you define a brilliant woman? What does it mean to be a brilliant woman?
I purposely didn't read your questions ahead of time. Yeah. Because I wanted to be.
That's the only part, those are the only staple questions we ask. Everything else has just been free flowing.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. And I wanted to be in the moment with you. How do I define a brilliant woman?
Yeah.
She has arrived in her own shoes and in her own skin. She wakes up each day, and she, in her space of service and love, she knows she has nothing to prove, nothing to protect, nothing to hide, and nothing to defend. That she serves from her overflow. She doesn't serve from her cup. She serves from her saucer. A brilliant woman stands in her beauty, and she speaks without having to open her mouth. She can lead from behind. Matter of fact, she's often leading from behind. A brilliant woman knows how to expand and contract in a room based on what the room needs, because she doesn't need the spotlight. She can serve it and give it to someone else who needs it more in the moment. She can give that to them.
Wow. That's awesome. So, one very common question that we also ask is, as women, what do you believe is the conversation that we need to be having collectively?
We need to be having the conversation about putting us first and being okay with resting, and to remind each other that this journey that we're on is not a race, it's a marathon. And that we are supposed, it's our birthright to enjoy the journey. And finally, we should be having the conversation with one another that we are always and will always be our own rescue when we need that. That we woke up whole and complete, and that it's our job to give ourselves what we need, and that no one else can complete us. Everyone else can complement the completeness that we took care of already.
Okay, we'll get to that love part. I'm gonna put that love part in the corner because I'm gonna come
Put a
back
pin
and
in
check
it.
on that.
Put a pin in it. Put a pin in it.
But before we get any, before we come back to that love question, a matter of fact, we might end it on that love question. But at this point in your life, what drives you to make a difference that you are making in your national and global community? Really, what's that driving thing right now that influences you?
I was in Slovenia recently, and I was speaking to about 5,000 people in 13 different languages, and very few of them spoke English. And watching a room full of, where there was no blacks. I was the only black person in the room of 5,000 people.
Wow.
And one of a handful of people who spoke English. And watching the liberation occur, watching them with headsets on for the translators, watching them cry, watching them scream, watching them step a little closer into owning their brilliance, owning their breakdowns, owning their beauty, giving themselves permission, watching it occur in an environment. And the reason why I say Slovenia, I was the only black person, non-English, because it's the environment that I never imagined as a child. Watching it occur, it shows me how when I'm obedient, when I step in, when I say yes, yes, what can occur in someone else's life. That this journey is not all mine, and it's less about me on the journey. And
that is
drives
such a powerful realization.
It drives me. It drives me to recognize that there's an assignment on my life, and my job is to wake up every day and be responsible and say yes to that assignment. When I recognize that the dash between my birthday and my transition day, my dash is supposed to disrupt, it's supposed to ignite, it's supposed to motivate, inspire. My dash is supposed to do that. And that right now it's my dash. I'm living in my dash. And that my grandmother says when I get her age, I'm going to want to sit in my favorite rocking chair and share the story of my life. And she says that my job now, is to make my story that I'm going to share really good to tell. And the story I want to tell is that I was obedient, that I played full out, that by the time I sat down in my rocking chair, I was tired. I wasn't even tired. I was tired. Like I was exhausted because I played full out. Yeah.
So amazing. So amazing. Two final questions. The first one, and then we're going to get to the love one as the final question. So the first, second to the last question is, my heart is really after young people. I love young people, mentoring, motivating, etc. And so for our young women listening, Ladybrille young women community listening, they're seeing you. They're seeing a lot of women leaders out there. And they're saying, okay, I want to be like her, but they feel so overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. What would be your advice in whatever pursuits that they're taking on?
Yes.
What would you say is the first place for them to start?
Number one, sis, my little sisters, know that there's a woman like me somewhere, and she's full. She's full of wisdom and grace and compassion and love. And she would love more than nothing else but to pour into the little her, which would be you. And you have to find her. She's not going to come knocking at your door. You got to go knocking at her door. And then let her know that you're worth the investment. That's number one.
How do you let her know you're worth the investment? Because she's so busy, she might miss seeing you.
Tell her.
Okay.
I'm worth the investment. I won't let you down. Pour into me and I will bear good fruit. I will be a good harvest to reap. I want to learn from you. I value you. I want to be like you in my best version. Show me something other than what I see on Facebook and what I see on Atlanta Housewives and what I see on hip hop, Love and Hip Hop. Show me another version of who I can become. Plead to her, show her, invite her, take her out to a very cheap lunch, take her out to a very cheap dinner. She knows your budget. It's quite okay, and then ask her. And when you ask her for guidance, take notes. or record. And then the most important thing you could do, the most important thing you could do of all things is implement the coaching she's giving you. Because when you implement the coaching she's giving you, now she makes a decision that you're worth the investment. I mentor young girls. I have so many adopted nieces. I mean, just some are in their 30s now and some are just at 20. And the one thing I say is the first time I give it to you, it's because you asked for it. The second time I give it to you, it's because you implemented what I said the first time and every subsequent time. And then lastly, to my little sister, give yourself permission to make really stupid mistakes and still be brilliant and still be beautiful and still be amazing and still be a mini me, a mini her, a mini us, still be a brilliant young woman in the face of breakdown. You're still brilliant.
Wow. Thank you so much. So,
you're welcome.
A question on the love thing. It's a big deal. A lot of us, I think, women in general, everyone wants to be loved and loved. Yes. I don't care whether you are a guy or a girl, because for the most part, we sell a lot to women. Yes. But men have the same need. But focusing more so on women, since we're talking about you and you finding love, I'm aware of the history of your son's father and how much of an impact that had for a long time, and how you held on till you got to a point where you finally said, I forgive you, picked up the phone and called him. Have you been able to find love again, to allow yourself to love and be loved?
I love your questions. I love how you've done your research. I love how you know my journey, so we could be together from that level of familiarity. I appreciate that, and I'm honored that you've taken that time.
Thank you.
I have a great relationship with my son's father, just an amazing. It's almost, my son says, Mama, it's kind of bizarre that you guys are such good friends now, because I let forgiveness really live. And I really liked him. I really loved him. 21 years ago. And it was just my holding on to the hurt, holding on to the fact that he went to prison when my son was 8 months old and has been in prison ever since and is still in prison.
Still in prison.
He's still in prison. And he's authored 12 books.
I was about to say, because I did some research. He has a website. He has his books. He has everything. So
everything. He was a published author before me.
Oh.
He's been amazing. I just wouldn't allow myself to celebrate him. Because I felt like he abandoned my son. I was okay with it. It was really my son, and I was holding on to that. You know how you can have justified anger, justified. So for me, I go, oh, it's okay. But for my son, because then I get more knowledge from the sister friends. And then it came a point where I go, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable either. Yeah. I need to give grace and compassion to this man. I need to love him for where he is.
And he's brilliant, too, to have done 12 books. Wow, that's amazing.
Girl, let me tell you, he does blog talk interviews, online interviews, web-based interviews from prison. Yeah. He has a bigger interview schedule when each time his book comes out than some of my authors that I work with that I'm coaching. And so I tell them, guys, you can do this, anyone. So your question.
That's impressive.
It is very impressive.
And it's particularly impressive for one who has been a criminal defense attorney for a long time before transitioning to where I'm at. So I know what it's like hanging with people, representing them behind the bars. Yes. And for him, behind bars, for him to be able to do that, that's huge.
He has three publishers.
Wow.
He has 12 books out. And then through our friendship and as he evolved, he stopped using his writing name so much because he was afraid that people wouldn't accept him. So he used Peter Mack, his writing name.
Yes, that's what I see.
Yeah, Peter Mack, right. Peter Mack. Well, if you now look, his latest books, he actually used his name, Isiko Cooks. Yeah. And that was a transformation for him. And that came through our healing. It was really beautiful. So as we healed, I didn't even know he had so much shame about it. And so when I released my shame and was willing to talk about him, and this is still new, by the way, you are the first interview that
it's Ladybrille,
I'm just saying, Ladybrille in the house. So then once I did that, the floodgates of possibility for now love entered into my life. And I didn't rush out because I've never been lonely. I've been alone, but not lonely because I've created such great relationships with really beautiful men. I just realized that they never now I'm gonna say this is gonna be girlfriend talk.
Absolutely. Let's make it
Girlfriend
happen.
talk. So I realized that every man I dated, and you know, men would like to date me. I'm pretty dateable. Like I come with a decent package. I mean,
You're
it's all
hot.
you know,
Definitely. I saw
you
those
know,
cover pictures.
and so and I'm humbled. There's always someone better in some area, but they knew that I came low maintenance emotional. I came low maintenance financial. I came wild and wanted to travel the world. So, and I'm an alpha woman at times, and I'm really girly at times. So it was kind of a great blend. So there was always an abundance.
I love how she says that. Kind of agree with. I'm an alpha woman and a.
Yeah, I'm an alpha woman. I'm a girly girl. So I like doing all of it, right?
Yeah.
And so you can have it, use it. It works.
Yeah, I know, right?
Right. So you can have anything I'm saying right now. It's for all of us girls.
No
to share.
problem.
All of us girls to share.
You won't charge me for copyright
Not
infringement.
at all.
No.
Not at all. You can have it. This is girlfriend generosity right here, right here. And so there was always an abundance of men. What I realized was that I when I would date, I would start dating, and at the beginning of the experience, it was like putting a carton of milk in my refrigerator. I didn't check the expiration date, but I knew at some point there was an expiration date, which meant I didn't allow myself to see forever. I just didn't allow myself to see forever for multiple reasons. And so in this season, I really sat back, and a lot of it had to do with healing my relationship with my son's father, forgiving him. He had been trying for years to have that relationship with me. And I finally surrendered and just let the truth be the truth. I love you. I think you're amazing, and you're a great guy. And you happen to be in prison for 22 years. And I'm sorry that that's your experience, but it doesn't change the fact that I love you and you're great. Once I did that.
That is so critical.
Yeah, it was everything. When I tell you it was December 12th, 2014, it came with crying, crocodile tears, snotty, ugly. And a lot of times as super sister soldiers like you and I, we don't want to go to that place that I had to go to. We don't want to see ourselves in that level of breakdown. We measure ourselves so much. I gave myself permission to come back from my breakdown. So I could go into it and let it be what it is. Into it and let it, and just, I cried on the phone with him, girl. I told him everything. I said, I never admitted that I loved him. I never said out loud that I said, I loved you. I didn't want you to go. And then I said, I waited for you for 10 years. I dated, but I dated lightly, waiting on you. And then I had to lose you again because after you had been gone for so long, I thought now he's a career, incarcerated. I can't have that in my life because I'm Lisa Nichols, like all that stuff. And so I just admitted all of it to him. I just let it all go. Girl was like I just like dumped it all out. And then I said, and now I'm ready for love in my life. So I need to allow you to be my son's father. I need to allow you to be someone that I was madly in love with that I never told. And I need to release you. And wow. he cried. And he cried. And I cried. And he fought for me. He goes, don't. And he knew in the back of his head that a part of me wasn't available for that reason. And I said, I need to give myself a chance at love. And I did it to give myself a chance at love. So now I would say on stage, now I'm dateable. And I date and I have a great time. And I have someone in my life that we're emerging. I'm allowing it to merge. I'm not in a rush. I don't live by a biological clock. So I should not be anywhere that I'm not at 50.
Amen to
I
that.
shouldn't be married if I'm not. I shouldn't have more kids if I'm not. I am not setting my lifestyle up on someone else's blueprint. That's what's not going to happen. So I don't allow people to force me. Girl, by now you should be, hold on. Don't impose your clock on me. That's your clock. That's not my clock. Because I'm a better woman now to date than I've ever been. I tell the guys that I'm spending time with now, you got the best version of Lisa ever. Because I've been through enough. I've shared enough. I've been broken enough. I've been rebuilt enough. I've been humbled enough. So it's the best version of me. So now, I allow myself to see future without a timeline. And that's different for me and new for me. And I carve out time. I prioritize. My calendar reflects the fact, just hear this. My calendar reflects the fact that dating is
It's
important to
priority.
me.
Oh,
It
important, yeah,
it's
in your
important to me.
schedule.
My calendar didn't reflect it before. Men and potential suitors had to squeeze in between my countries, had to squeeze in between my keynotes. Now I push time aside so that I can just have time to do Lisa and to date. So I allow my personal life to live inside my business life.
Lisa, it's been real. I'm so honored to have you. And I know before we started, I shared the story, but I can also share it again. I'm a big Les Brown fan, a big Jim Rohn fan. I have everything everywhere that I'm constantly using to inspire because I'm just
Yes.
made up that way. That's my constitution. And one day I was on YouTube listening to yet another Les Brown, speech.
I love Les.
And then there's a recommendation, how YouTube recommends on the sidebar, the right sidebar.
Hmm.
And I saw your video and I thought, okay, what's this? Who's this? Click through it. It's one of those, I think, Awesome Fest or one of those
Oh
festivals.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
Awesome Fest. And I listened to it, and then next, it was a weekend, and I just spent the whole weekend watching every Lisa
I love it.
Nichols,
Oh,
listening to everything, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I remember last year going into my mastermind group, and we're talking about all of this, and I said, well, I've always loved Les Brown because I too want to be um, in that capacity speaking, and God's
inspiring
revealed to
people.
me that that's the direction he wants to take me in that way. But I said, there's a woman I just found out about, and I remember one of our mastermind women saying, hey, you want to come to an upcoming I think it was like a speaking festival thing you had, a conference in San Diego. And
Yes.
unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. And it was going to be on my birthday. That would have been good, but I had something else planned. It was in May, I think, of last
Yes.
year or something. Yeah.
Speaking right to make millions.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. She said, well, you can get to meet her. I have an extra ticket. And I was
Oh
like, oh,
wow.
I can't make it. But because it was, my family had planned something for
Right,
that
right, right.
weekend for me. But it's an honor to kick it with you now and just have
Yes.
a real talk. And I appreciate the transparency. And it was very important to me not to necessarily replicate what's been said before, but to
Yes.
go to the heart of celebrating and honoring you by really
Yes.
getting to know you
Thank
a
you.
little bit more. So we enjoyed our time, and thank you for accepting to let us celebrate you as
Absolutely.
a Ladybrille Woman of the Month for August
Mm.
2016. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And let me know any way that I can pour into your future, any way that I can support you and where you're going. I would love, love to participate. And on my phone is Les Brown's number.
Oh,
I'm gonna,
okay.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna call him afterwards and tell him that he has a beautiful, beautiful fan. And you
Oh,
let me
thank
know
you so much.